Welcome to Lead Different.
Have you ever felt like you're the only one in your workplace who sees a better way to do things? Welcome back to the Lead Different podcast. Today, we're diving into a conversation that will challenge your status quo and help you find your unique way to contribute. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest, Nick Koshute. Nick is the regional chapter manager for young Catholic professionals and a multi-talented leader with a passion for photography and the outdoors. He brings a wealth of experience in navigating career transitions and helping young professionals integrate their faith and values into the workplace. In this episode, we're going to explore the power of self-awareness, the why of challenge, and the true meaning of humility in leadership. We discuss Nick's journey through various workplace cultures and why being open to new ideas is the secret to high-performing teams. This conversation is a powerful reminder that leading differently starts with knowing your why. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned as we learn to lead with purpose with the incredible Nick Koshute.
Why not leadership? Why not lead different?
Welcome to Lead Different, the podcast that redefines leadership and challenges the status quo. Hosted by Daniel Dominguez, founder and CEO of Why Not Leadership. This show is your compass to becoming a better leader through the power of self-awareness. Good leaders foster teams that are engaged, empowered, and energized. Join us on this transformative journey as we equip you with the tools and insights to lead different. Get ready to challenge the ordinary and embrace self-aware leadership. This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.
Hello, Nick Koshute, and welcome to the show. Welcome to the Lead Different podcast. It is so good to have you on.
Likewise, it's such an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. You know, we've been talking for a couple of years. I ran into you on LinkedIn, and then we've got some common groups that we're members of, and I've always enjoyed your content, Nick. You do a great job of putting out some great content, and that's just your leadership content. You also have some great photography content. You're one of those people that's just multi-talented in a lot of areas, and I've been excited about having you on because a lot of the leaders I speak to, Nick, are the people that are leading organizations at a really high level. You come to us in a leadership position where you're dealing with those high-level leaders, and you get to see the benefits and the challenges that some of those leaders have when they do or don't possess the self-awareness that we talk about so often here on the Lead Different podcast. So I'm looking forward to asking you some questions about that. And I know you're involved in a new venture, so I want to hear more about that. What's exciting in your life right now, Nick?
Oh my gosh. So many good things out here in Denver, Colorado. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so I'm loving the sunshine out here. So outside of work, as you know, I love to hike. You said photography. I've got some great friends out here. But then, professionally, I just making that transition. I'm in week 2 right now at the time of this recording of being regional chapter manager for young Catholic professionals. And so it's just really cool to see, as we're going to get to here, how the different stops in my career and how the different experiences has led up to this point. So I just say a lot of change, but in the best way.
Yeah, so change is inevitable, right? We're going to have that throughout our careers. And one of the things I know about you, because I've had the opportunity to take you through our YOS discovery, is change is not anything that's going to fluster you. For those of you that don't know, and if you've watched the show, you know we always give our guests the opportunity to take the YOS discovery. And Nick comes to us with the why of challenge, a how of better way, and a what of contribute. So we know this about Nick. He likes to do things different, outside the box, and he likes to challenge the status quo. How he does that is by always looking for better ways to do things and then sharing them with others. And ultimately what he brings is a way to contribute. So with that kind of profile, who wouldn't want him on their team? Somebody that's going to challenge us to do things differently by finding better ways in order to contribute to our success. And it sounds like you've landed in a place that is taking advantage of those areas of focus that you like, which is being different, being better, and contributing to a greater cause.
Yeah. And before we even get into that, what was coming to my mind, Dan, was I was thinking back to my childhood actually, because I'm one of five and I land at number 4. And so just that spot in the family, you talked about change. I was
Right.
always dealing with changes. I was going to, older siblings events and college visits, and I didn't have much say in what
Right.
we were doing. So like I think that was part of what developed that ability to kind of go with the flow. And yet
Mhm.
you better believe it, when we talk about challenge and better way, you could ask my parents. I was always challenging them, always thinking that I had a better way, and hopefully doing some contributing as well. But that was just the first thing that came to mind that I really didn't think about when it came to my YOS operating system. But I think that really started in my upbringing.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me, Dan, is your YOS hardwired? Is it nature or nurture? And my answer is yes. I think a lot of it we're born with it, and I think we develop it or we adapt in childhood. But most of it is hardwired by the time we're 7 or 8 years old. I know our daughter took it, and she was a challenge when she was 7 years old, and she's 14. Took it again, same thing. She's very similar to you. Challenge, better way, trust is her top 3.
Yeah.
So you guys would get along. But yeah, we talk about that. The reason I bring it up, Nick, is because you did make a recent career change. So you're now with Young Catholic Professionals. For those that don't know, let's give you a chance to talk about what you do. Who is your audience?
Yeah.
Who is it you're trying to reach in your new role?
Absolutely. So Young Catholic Professionals is a nationwide apostolate. That's what we call ourselves, an apostolate. And really at its core, we are seeking to raise up modern day saints in the workplace. And so what makes us unique is that as far as I know, we're the only organization that's really at that intersection of the Catholic faith in the context of the workplace. And I myself have really benefited from going to the events here in Denver. There's a wonderful chapter here in Denver. Just a couple days ago, we were doing a service project at a religious order, but been to great talks and different workshops, and just really positively benefited from that. But I think going back a step further, what really got me intrigued at this role is my own experience. Going through I'm in my early 30s now. My 20s was a difficult time, both personally, but also professionally. And there's just like a lot to navigate. You're trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do with my life? You're thrown into this new thing called a workplace for the first time, working 8 hours a day. You're dealing with the people that you work with and the culture, and you have a boss, and maybe you're the only one that believes the way that you believe. And that can be really stressful. That can be really lonely. And so I think at its core, we're helping young people be all they could be, fully alive as saints, but also just that support in the context of community to guide young people through that really difficult phase that I myself really faced personally.
Yeah, you mentioned something that's really important. You said, what if you're, sometimes you're the only one that feels the way you feel, or sometimes you may feel like you're the only one. You may not necessarily be the only one that feels the way you feel, but it feels that way to you. And that often happens when our why is to challenge the status quo, when we're always looking at things differently and trying to figure out, how can we do it differently? Why do we have to do it that way? I assume there's a place for it. And if you're in a company that's creative and wants to listen to your ideas, that's a great place for you to be. But I can also imagine that it's frustrating if you're at a place that doesn't want to change, doesn't want to do anything different than what they're already doing. What's your experience been like with regards to that part of your makeup?
Yeah, wonderful question. So just going a step back and thinking about my journey since college. So in millennial fashion, right, I've had a few different stops along the way, which, sometimes I'm like, man, I wish my ego is like, I wish it would have been a little bit more linear. But when I really think about it, what actually like has made me valuable has been those different stops, because I've worked in different workplaces in different roles, but also very different cultures, and just learned a ton. I've had a ton of different angles to learn from. And so what I would say is my experience has been very varied, both in the role, but also the culture and the leadership, in the receptivity to my ideas, right? So I've worked in places. There was one particular place where, in all honesty, the leadership did not want ideas, not just from me, but from anyone. And people got really, really frustrated. You could see how that really killed the morale. They would listen, but they really wouldn't take it seriously, and they would often get defensive. Whereas, I could already tell 2 weeks in, like the organization I'm in right now, really welcomes that, which is so awesome. It's both what makes an organization great, right? But also with that's my YOS, like that really, really excites me. And you can tell the difference. Whereas that previous workplace I was talking about, people were low morale. They were just barely getting by. But here there's this energy and joy and passion that people work with. And that exists for a lot of different reasons, I'm sure. But that just openness to ideas and challenge. And I'd say they not only are receptive to it, but they actually seek it out. So one thing that's really stuck out to me in my new boss is like every conversation, she's not telling us what to do. She is being a facilitator, and she's always asking, what do you guys think? What are your ideas? So that's really, really impressive. Now, the other thing that I will mention, and for all of you that have the challenge or better way, you're a creative person, right? There is the other end of the equation, which is actually disciplined by my ideas at times. And like there is a time to not think outside of the box, and like you actually just need to execute, right? You don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. So I think there's a lot of like prudence and wisdom to say, when is it time to innovate? When is it time to think big picture? But maybe actually we have something that works. And so it's not a big macro innovation, but rather maybe there's a little micro innovations that we can kind of work through.
That makes a big difference, Nick. And I can tell, I mean, just even, you and I have conversations regularly. I can tell your energy. I can tell you're excited about going to work. You're excited about this new role. In your new role, what is it that you're going to be specifically in charge of? What do you see? Who are the people you're going to be trying to connect and reach out to?
Absolutely. So the way that Young Catholic Professionals works is there are chapters, what they're called, all over the country in 40 plus cities, and hopefully going to be expanding here too. We're definitely in some growth mode. So my primary responsibility, I would say, is, I'm going to use the word support. Going to be supporting all of these chapters of volunteer leaders. And I use that word very intentionally because I've been thinking about, I haven't quite got into that part of the work yet. I've been doing some training and just onboarding right now, but I'm really excited to jump in. That's going to happen soon. If I was in their shoes, because this is also sort of a new position in the history of Young Catholic Professionals. Okay. Like I'm trying to put myself in their shoes of like, why might they be excited for me coming in, this new mysterious guy coming in, and what fears or hesitations might they have? And like we've talked about this, but like these leaders, this is their baby. Like they've been working hard. They are the experts. They know their chapter inside and out. And I need to come in with that humility to say, like, you are the experts. But at the same time, I have this, bank of knowledge that I've, acquired over the past 10 years or so that can really be that supportive, helpful role. And together we can collaborate. And so what that's going to look like practically is, one, just being someone that really helps them to feel heard. And like, these are the things that we're struggling with, both maybe in the work, but also maybe just in my profession or in my personal life. So just being that supportive role, but also using so in my past, I worked with 50 plus leadership teams and leaders at Catholic churches, just like using that experience to help them, stay aligned on where we're trying to get to. What does success look like? What clarity might they need, but also just like how can we work well together as a team? So that's a lot, I would say, but that's really what gets me excited too about this role, is that it's this big puzzle of people and strategy and different details, and kind of
Right.
making sense of it and making sure it's all put together well. But the goal is really just to have the best events that we possibly can, so we can impact as many Catholic young professionals through that journey, like I talked about, as possible.
So what does someone get? What are these chapter leaders doing? What is the difference that they get from being part of young Catholic professionals?
Yeah, the difference. Are you referring to like somebody shows up at an event? What are they
Yeah,
getting?
what are they going to get at an event? Why should they come to
Yeah.
that event? And what is it that the goal of the organization is?
Yeah, definitely. So what I'll first talk from like my own personal experience, a couple of stories that I have being involved. One would be the one right off the bat, right? Is I was actually, you mentioned photography. I was actually contracted maybe 4 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago, to do some photography for an event, which our now mutual friend Jeff Scheffelbein was actually speaking at that event. For those of you who don't know, Jeff is a good friend of ours and runs a consulting agency called The Undivided Life. But at that time, I was making another job transition, and I reached out to Jeff on LinkedIn. And Jeff was so gracious to me and really took me under my wing. I think we probably had 5 or 6 conversations. He has a lot of things on his plate. He would be driving to clients, and he'd just give me advice and hear me out and just really guide me as a young professional when I was starting out in my journey coaching and consulting, which was this whole big scary thing at the time. So there's one story right there of like just access to, mentors, right? People that are going to guide you. He had a great talk that night. So great talks. But also, yeah, just that community too at these events, because again, if you're in a workplace where maybe you're the only one that you feel like have the beliefs that you have, or whatever it might be, you can feel this sense of alienation. Maybe you're working remote, and just to have a community of like-minded people that are not just trying to perform well in the workplace, which we obviously all are, but we're doing it for a bigger purpose. Just having that community of people around you really makes you feel less alone and more alive, is what I would say. And then, like I mentioned before, sprinkled in there's some opportunities to serve, for example. So this weekend we were at a hermitage and helping them do some groundwork. In the past too, we've cleaned up around the Basilica Cathedral in Denver here. There's like 5 names of that church. I don't know what that's about, but yeah, so there's also the opportunity to give back as well. So a lot of different things there.
You mentioned it earlier, Nick, and I want to come back to it. Thank you for that answer. Appreciate it, because I think that's important for people that are listening. And we'll put your contact information in the show notes so people can get a hold of you if they're interested in learning more. But one of the things you mentioned is humility. What does humility look like in the workplace to you? And why do you think that a lack of humility is such a threat to business success?
Great question. So at its core, humility is actually quite simple. Humility is truth. It's the truth about who we are. Now, before I go further in that, I think it's important to define what humility is not, because I feel like humility is one of those virtues that is not really respected, at least until recently, in the workplace. Because when we think about leaders, right, we obviously want someone who's confident, someone who's competent, right, who's really charting the course. And historically, I feel like when people think about humility, they're thinking about that weak person that's shrinking, that's just like, I don't know, I'm no good. They're shrinking, they're weak, they're not confident. But that couldn't be further from the truth. That's actually false humility. Real humility is looking at yourself as you really are. And that includes my weaknesses. Yes. Okay. Like for me, I could be a yapper. I can talk a lot and not listen enough or overthink things. Right. and I need to be aware of those things, but I also need to own my gifts, right? Because God gave me these gifts that can really contribute, right? I can challenge, I can find a better way and contribute. So I need to own those too. So I think it's looking at yourself as you really, really are. And I've seen when there's a lack of humility at these different organizations that I've worked for, it's really disastrous to obviously who you are as a person and how you affect the people around you, but also the results of the business. And what does that look like? You know, how does that show up when we lack humility, and what are the costs of that? So again, there's an organization I worked for who, you know, it can look like not wanting to hear outside ideas, thinking you always have the answer, right? We see this a lot in the C-suite. Unfortunately, I call it ivory tower syndrome, right? Where it's like we're up here, you know, having these high level meetings and we're looking at spreadsheets, but there's actually a gap between all of that and the people on the ground who really, like I said before, are the experts. So maybe it looks like not listening to your people, or not asking or rewarding feedback. Or it also could look like you're out of touch with the market, right? I've seen that too, where it's like we're actually assuming that we know what people want and need and what's working for them, and we don't ask enough questions, and we actually are serving the market in a way that's ineffective. And I've seen that really, really hurt an organization. So that's a couple different ways that I'm thinking about. But it could also just show up just, you know, in those human things, those human dynamics of, I'm just going to look out for me. Like, I'm going to seek my own glory and my own, my own benefit instead of serving other people. So I think there's a lot at stake here. And this leads me, you know, when I think about the different dysfunction in leadership and culture that I've experienced, that I've talked to so many people who have experienced the same thing. My dad struggled with his relationship with work at times, and could see him bring that home. When I think about my own experience and hearing the experience of others, it clicked for me one day. When you really boil it down to its simplest form, all of it at its core is a lack of humility. So I've been talking a lot, which maybe is a lack of humility right there. But did you have a second part to your question, Dan?
No, that's a really good answer. I really appreciate it, Nick. You know, the goal of interview should be that you should be doing 80% of the talking. And so if we can stick to that rule, we're going to be doing really great. So you told us what humility looks like, what it doesn't look like. And the second part was how is it a threat to the business success? And I think you did a good job of answering that. You know, for someone who is, you know, you mentioned you're a millennial, you're young, you're early in your career, but you're not that early. You're not just coming right out of college. What is it that got you so passionate about leadership and culture and helping people be more alive at work? What is it that drove you to get involved in that part of the business?
Great question. I'm going to think about that for a second. I was thinking about that before. I think the quick answer is that it's sort of something I fell into. So you might say it's a calling. I didn't set out to be, I'm going to be interested in culture or leadership. It's one of those passions that actually developed over time through my own experiences working at various places in my 20s and into my early 30s. I've been out of college for about 10 years. And then, you know, talking to other people as well. And so a slight tangent here that I want to say to the young people, that like, if you don't know what you're interested in and your passion is right out of college, like, that's okay. Some people know they want to be a doctor, right? From the time they're 7 years old. But for me, it took actually getting into the world and having these experiences to really be revealed that, hey, I actually do have this passion. And I would say a lot of it, to be honest with you, came through pain, like challenges at work, right? And like feeling like at certain times, man, like this makes me feel terrible, and I don't want anyone else to feel like this, right? Like I would say another aspect would be my favorite spiritual quote is the glory of God is the human person fully alive. That comes from Saint Irenaeus. And like, just in my life in general, that really resonates with me, of like, people talk about happiness and joy. throw around these words, but what I really think we all want is to be alive. And I noticed through my own experience that like our relationship with work is not everything, right? It's not the center of our life, but I don't know what percentage it is, maybe 70% of the time of our Monday, Friday, right, is at work. So I noticed that my relationship with work has a huge impact on my whole life in general and my level of aliveness, of happiness, whatever you want to call it. And it bleeds into everything else. So when I'm feeling fulfilled and alive at work, makes everything else in my life better. And again, I saw how that impacted my dad too. And so this really, God has put, I think, a calling on my heart and an interest and a passion, because I love to like nerd out about this stuff and listen to audiobooks and study this stuff. And so it's my hope, and this can, I think, be played out in a lot of different ways, to help other people have a better relationship with work through, leadership and culture specifically, because I don't want them to feel those challenges, that pain that I felt, although maybe they should to a degree. That can help them grow too. But yeah, just trying to help them be more alive in their work.
I really appreciate that answer. Nick, you not only talk about this, you're not only passionate about leadership, culture, and helping people be more alive. You recently gave a talk at the Colorado Catholic Business Network, and it was titled Scattered Focus, Why Saying No Matters in Business. Tell me why you chose that topic, and why is it important to stay focused and say no as leaders?
Sorry, Dan, can you repeat the question? I got distracted. No, I'm just kidding. That was a bad joke. Yes, great question. Okay, a few different things. One, as an idea guy, that's a blessing and a curse. I talked about it before. There's always ideas popping up in my head. And so it's a similar answer to the last one, which is like, this is a personal struggle for me, because my genius is also an area of temptation to be less effective. And so I've actually had to put a lot of work into staying focused myself, and really getting clear around what is the calling for my life, and like, what am I supposed to be working on? Because as you said at the beginning, I'm interested in a lot of things, both personally and professionally, which is cool, but it's like, you can't be effective if you try to do everything. And where there's been a good reminder of that, like I said, I like to consume a lot of things, podcasts, books, different things, is that's really been a message I've been noticing showing up in a lot of different media, right? So Alex Hormozy is one of those guys that I listen to. I don't agree with everything that he says, but he's got a lot of good practical business wisdom, and he talks about that over and over and over again. But I've just been seeing it showing up more and more. And so when I was thinking about giving the talk, I was thinking about that, and just how, with all the tech that we have, with all the opportunity that we have, that being scattered and a lack of focus is probably one of the temptations of our time. And so I thought, if this is being talked about so much, in the culture, and if I'm dealing with this, I bet there's going to be other people in the room that are struggling with the same thing. And before I gave my talk, the gentleman, Patrick, who was introducing me, went around the room and asked people why they decided to show up for the talk. And I immediately knew I had, it was probably the Holy Spirit helped me to choose a good topic, because just about everybody was resonating with that. And you could see some real struggle in that. Like, man, I know I need to get focused, but I just don't know how. And I just can't say no. So that's kind of where the topic came from.
Yeah. And, I can see that's an issue. I mean, there's so much out there, right? There's so many things you can do. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. How do you stay focused? What do you use? What are the filters you use, Nick, to decide whether or not you'll get involved in something? You're an outdoorsman, you're a photographer, you're a blogger, you're a coach, you're a consultant, you're a regional director in your current role, and you love speaking and coaching. So What are
Yeah.
what are the rules? What's a good rule for you to ensure whether or not you want to get involved in something? Because it's real easy to get to scatter your focus, as you talked about, and be involved in a lot of things and maybe not make a big difference in any one thing,
Yeah.
but making a little difference in a lot of places. So how do you make sure
Yeah.
you stay focused? What filters do you use?
That's a great question. So I'll start by being vulnerable and honest and saying it's still a work in progress of really getting that clarity for myself of like, okay, what exactly am I being called to do? But the principle I'd say that I'm striving to use comes from what I learned from working with all the parishes in that leadership, consulting, and coaching role. And I think about it's like it's really beginning with the end in mind, right? Stephen Covey talks about that, I believe, in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So it's like if you don't know where you're trying to get to, if you don't know what your purpose is and what your calling is, if you don't know that end, then it's going to be nearly impossible to say, hey, how do I know what to say yes to and what to say no to? And when I was working with these parishes, it was a big thing that we did. So we'd wrestle with, why do we exist? You know, what are those things that only we can do? Obviously, in that case, churches, everybody knows why churches exist, but each one has its own charisms and own context, and it lives it out in a slightly different ways. So we'd also work on something called strategic anchors. So those would be like lenses to look through to help you make decisions. So we know where we want to get to. We know how we're going to do that. So every decision, right, is run through those filters. So I'm kind of trying to develop my own, kind of treating my life as a startup, Arthur Brooks likes to say, and kind of developing those over time. I'm not there yet, but that's the general idea of how I'm striving to know what to say yes to and no to. And then some of it too is just taking it to prayer and thinking about looking inward, because I think calling and like passion, I know, Dan, you sent me that one video that I think talks about this, is kind of the same thing. Like you kind of feel this fire in you, this interest, and you kind of know when it's right to say yes. Now, the problem is sometimes you can be feeling that way about different things. So it takes some discernment, but that's kind of the framework and the way that I think about this.
No, that's a great way to start thinking about that. One of the things that I always talk to people that I'm coaching, and especially since you have the tool available to you, Nick, is, I think the things that you're going to like is anytime you're in a place where you're going to be allowed to be creative and be different and do things your own way, that's going to be a place where you want to say yes to. Any place that is looking for a better way, because you're going to be an innovator that finds better ways to do things, is a place you want to be in. And any place that you're going to be making a difference is going to be a good place for you. So I always take those top 3. For me, they're my filters. My filters are contribute, challenge, and make sense. For you, is it different? Is it better? And does it make a difference? And if it says yes to all those 3, you're going to have energy for it. Now, again, there's a lot of things where you can be different, better, and contribute. So you still have to filter it through. The next set of filters is, do you have the time? And are you going to be able to get to it? So that makes a lot of sense.
Can I jump in actually? Yeah, sorry to interrupt the guest, but I'm getting excited.
You can interrupt the host.
Or sorry, I called you the guest. Humility, Okay, so I'm thinking about, to Dan, the host, not the guest, how this ties actually into that humility piece in 2 ways. One, you talk about, do I have the time? Do I have the bandwidth? That takes humility to say no and to say, like, actually, I'm a limited human being. And so these actually might, to your point, fit under my filters, but I still can't choose all of them. And that's just a reality. But also for me specifically, you talk about me challenging, me finding a better way in order to contribute, especially when you're coming into a new organization. Those have to be tempered with humility, right? Both in the sense of like, hey, I'm new. I need to be asking a lot of questions. Like there's times to challenge, there's times to bring up a better way in order to contribute. But like the truth is, I have a lot of context that I need to learn to be able to make like informed decisions and ideas. So I've got to have that humility. And also in the way that I deliver those. Like so challenge is a good thing. Seeking a better way is a good thing, but the way in which you communicate that can either be humble, or you can come across as, I'm just going to challenge you because I like disagreeing with you,
Yeah.
or I think that I always have the best way, right? So yeah, just thinking about that connection between my
Right.
OS and humility as well.
No, I think that's really good, and I always bring that up because I think it's a great filter, but it's not the be all end all. And you bring up some very good points that are important. I love the humility piece of it because a lot of times we think we can do it all, and next thing you know, we're sick, we're unhealthy, our relationship, our
Yes.
personal relationships suffer. There's a price to everything. So I think putting it through those filters and having the humility to say, you know what, I don't have the bandwidth for that. I cannot help you as much as I want to. And as a contributor, you're always going to want to say no. I mean, say yes, because you want to help. But there's, I think there's humility in saying, hey, look, there's got to be someone else that can help. And that's not to pawn it off and say, I don't want to help. It's, are you making a big difference in the areas where you are? Are you really the only person that can do it? And it takes a lot of ego to think you're the only person that can help, right? So I love the way you tied that to humility. Let's talk a little bit about, there's a great book that you recommended, Surrender to Lead.
Yeah.
Tell us, what does it mean to surrender to lead?
Yeah.
And why did you recommend that book?
Yeah. So Jessica, she's an executive for a organization called Culture Partners. And I've been she's the author, one of the authors of the book. I've been following her and the other author for some time. And I just love their content. It just really resonates with how I see leadership and culture. And so when they were announcing this book, I was like, I got to get my hands on this. And it also has come at such a appropriate time in my life, just because for me personally, God has been challenging me to surrender, not just at work, but in different things in my personal life too, with all the changes and setbacks and different things. And so I've just really been wrestling with is what does it even mean to surrender, right? To trust and surrender. And then they wrote this book applying that to leadership in the workplace. And I'm like, this is perfect. And it's such an insightful book. And I think there's a lot of different things I could share about it, but I would just say definitely pick it up, either the book or the audiobook that I'm listening to, and take notes. But what the main takeaway with this is, you can either be, okay, let me back it up here. The purpose of leadership is to influence, right? That's something that you talk about, is to influence people to accomplish something. And basically there's two ways that you can do that. You can try to do that by trying to control, right? Controlling all the inputs and making sure people are doing exactly what you say when you say it, right? And really try to just get in there and control people. And this book is arguing that's not how it works. You actually have to surrender in order to get where you want to go. And what surrender looks like is not to, have that false humility or give up or do nothing. It's just to have the humility to say there are certain things I can influence and control, and there are certain things that I can't. And one of the big takeaways of that book is it's actually the job of the leader not to ensure people do certain things. It's to create the conditions, the environment, the ecosystem, so that people actually want to do those things and they're clear on what they need to do. Jessica talks about it's, how does she say it? It's creating experiences. So when you create certain experiences through how you show up as a leader, then you change people's beliefs about work, about who you are as a leader. And once those beliefs are changed, those beliefs are underneath their actions. And so if you're able to change beliefs through creating experiences, then that's how you get the results that you want. But that is done in your sphere of influence. It's not being what she calls, I think, a commander, a command and control leader. That's the opposite of a surrendered leader. So it really has a lot to do with humility, like we've been talking about. So that really ties into to our conversation.
So I was thinking, you know, because one of the things that I saw is the focus on beliefs, not behaviors, and you just talked about it. But do we change people's beliefs, or do we focus on the beliefs that are driving the current results, and then
Mm,
cultivate those beliefs? Because I mean, are you going to really get someone to change their beliefs? And I know that that's possible, but or is it better to see what are the beliefs that are really driving, and let's cultivate those, and let's
mm,
attract people who believe what we believe? What are your thoughts on that?
mm. That's a really good question. Let me think about what I believe when it comes to that for a second here. Yeah, I think it depends on what kind of beliefs that we're talking about. I think we all come to work with our like personal beliefs, and that's different than maybe what she's talking about is those like shared organizational
Hmm.
beliefs, right? Like you could have the belief of, I believe that my leader doesn't trust me, right? Or that my leader thinks like they've got to be a commander and controller over my work. Now you can change that belief through as a leader through your creating an experience,
Right.
right? Through your actions to change that belief. So let me think of an
Mhm.
example. So if say you have a kind of an outlook like, hey, I'm not going to be looking over your shoulder to see when you come into work and when you leave, right? It's just getting the work done.
Right.
You know, if you truly show up like that, people are going to believe that you trust them, right?
Right.
And that you think that you see them as an adult. And then that's going to make me feel as the employee like, wow, they believe in me. They trust me. So I'm actually going to want to show up and work harder. And so I think that's an example of like creating that experience to change the belief through your behaviors and the things you can control as a leader.
I agree so much, Nick. You know, I think that the question isn't how do I get people to do what I want? It's
Hmm.
what kind of environment is going to encourage people to bring their best. So
Absolutely.
how do we create as leaders that environment where people want to bring their best, where they feel seen, heard, and understood, engaged, empowered, energized by the
Hmm.
work and the
Hmm.
cause and the beliefs of the company and what it is that you're doing. So
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. It's not about getting people to do what you want. It's not about changing behaviors. It's really about getting to those core beliefs. The other thing that I hear in the book is that culture drives results more than strategy. So tell me, what are your thoughts on that?
Mm. So it reminds me of that quote that's tossed around a lot on LinkedIn and just in the business world in general of culture eats strategy for breakfast. We'd say that at the previous job that I was doing coaching and consulting at. And I agree with the spirit, right? In that if you have, a great plan, right, for success, but you don't have the ecosystem, you don't have the soil, so to speak, to execute that, the strategy is not going to matter.
Right.
But I've actually started to see strategy and culture as the same thing.
Hmm. Tell me
So they're
more.
not actually different. Like they're different, but they're not. I think what I'm trying to say is like you should be so intentional with the type of environment and culture that you're trying to create that you have a strategy for how to do that, right? Like you
Hmm.
need a strategy, an intentional strategy for creating that culture, because it is like the prerequisite to executing the strategy, the plan. That I think they're not necessarily two separate things. They just come, you know, culture is underlying. It's beneath the execution of the strategy. But I would challenge organizations to stop thinking about them in we're all as human beings, we're always trying to say this or that, this against that, this is better than that. It's like, no, it's both. you
Right.
you can't execute a strategy without a good culture. But if you have a great culture and you have zero strategy for execution, sure, you're going to have a good time for a little bit, but you're not going to be successful without a good plan. So both and is what I would
Yeah,
say.
no, I
Hopefully that
agree with
answers
you
your question.
100%, Nick. Sonia Shelton, a colleague of mine from the fellow Y Institute coach, talks about, maybe it's not that culture eats strategy for breakfast or strategy eats culture for breakfast, but maybe they should be having breakfast together and
I love
talking to
that.
each other, instead of trying to eat each other, because you're right. You need both elements in order to move forward. Nick, before we go, I'd love to hear some
Yeah.
more of your background. How did you end up where you are today? What's been the journey, and what have been the key elements that have built you to the place where you are today, and then that put you where you are in your career currently?
Yeah, great question. So even backing it up before, I think it's maybe just briefly backing up even before my professional life, they'll give you some context. So I grew up and I was an athlete. I played baseball, basketball, and soccer. If I would stand up, people would be surprised at the basketball part, but I could shoot. So I think that was like the first formation that I had in working with a group and work ethic and, having a coach and all those things. I love sports. I hated school. And when I started college, I went to Franciscan University of Steubenville. I picked business because I didn't know what else to do. Unlike those people that, say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be this. From the time I grew up, it's like I didn't really care about school, to be honest. I just wanted to play sports and be with my friends. And so I studied business, though. I chose business. I had a marketing minor at Franciscan University. I actually thought seriously about going into ministry during that time and after school, but took some steps towards that, and that door was not that was not the path. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I kind of, again, in millennial fashion in my 20s, I kind of dabbled with some different things. I did not. You talk about self-awareness, right? I did not yet have the professional self-awareness to say I'm creative and I like to challenge and have a better way, right? And I can do these different things. That had not, either I wasn't unaware of them or those skills had actually not been developed yet. So I started actually in banking. So I was working at a retail branch and did loans and credit cards and all those things. Great opportunity to learn sales and service and conversational skills. I also worked at a cubicle job for a real estate or a wireless infrastructure company that served the major carriers. And that job was terrible for my OS because there was no creativity. There was no challenging or better way. It was just execute the spreadsheets. And I was very miserable at that. I worked in recruiting with nurses. And then I mentioned, that role for a couple of years working in leadership coaching and consulting, which you had asked me. Yeah, I think this is a good time to talk about this. I didn't really answer this before. You'd asked me, like, how did I get into leadership and culture? I kind of mentioned why I have a passion for it, but I did kind of just slide into it. So I ended up going to that job where I was coaching and consulting, sort of just out of curiosity, and I had a conversation with someone that worked there. And I thought, that sounds really fun and cool. I didn't know I had a passion for it yet, but I just loved it. And then also, I think, I had some challenges in my personal life in my 20s and sort of some rock bottom experiences that I won't go deep into, but I will just say it gave me a lot of perspective, and feeling like there are times where, like, I don't have all my gifts available to me, gave me this drive to be excellent that I did not have before those experiences, so now I'm really grateful for it. And so I've noticed becoming more of a leader just out of that striving for excellence. And when you do that in different facets of your life, you sort of just naturally roll into that, and people start asking you, what are you doing? And, like, how did you get here? Even though I'm far from getting to where I want to be. So a little bit of a tangent there, but that's a little bit more about why I got passionate about leadership. It was really that coaching and consulting role, but then also just taking my life more seriously in that pursuit of excellence. But then after that, I was working as a sales manager, so to speak, at an apostolate. And then our whole department was basically let go a few months ago. And that was a difficult challenge, right? But as you mentioned, I've learned to adapt with change, and God has opened up this new door in only just a couple months. And I feel so blessed to be embarking on this journey and to have good work to do in the kind of domain of what I was looking for. So yeah, it was kind of a varied, I've worked in sales, recruiting, a little bit of marketing in there, some of that cubicle work. So kind of varied different things for Fortune 500 companies to Catholic apostolates. So again, I'm going to repeat what I said before, but there's some times where I'm like, I'm such a millennial, right? I like hopped around a little bit in my 20s, but I was actually talking to Jeff Schuffelbein about that. And I was asking him, like, Jeff, like, what makes you valuable? And this really stuck out to me. Jeff actually said, Nick, the thing that makes me valuable as a coach and a consultant to these different companies is that I've had a lot of varied experiences. Mm-hmm. He was sharing, like, I will sit on boards, I will volunteer, I will just get different experiences, pursue them.
Right.
Not because I want to, but because I know that's what helps me to learn. So that when I show up at a client, right, I have this bank of, first of all, stories I could tell to get points across, but just that rich experience that he's learned from, that he's able to apply. And so now I look back at my journey and look at it differently and say, yeah, maybe there would be some benefit of having it be more linear, but I'm actually more valuable in certain ways now to YCP in the current context, because I had different experiences in different roles and very different types of organizations that were struggling, that were strong in different ways, and then also had different challenges. So I'm actually really grateful about how that worked out, looking back on it.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you brought up sports, Nick, because the month of June, the Pope's, and we're recording this in June, the Pope's intention for the month of June is that for the values of sports. So he says, let us pray that sports be an instrument of peace, encounter, and dialogue among cultures and nations, and that they promote values such as respect, solidarity, and personal growth. So just thought that's a nice aside, because we brought it up. And so you said played baseball, you played basketball, and what else?
And soccer. Yeah.
And soccer.
So you mentioned the World
sport
Cup.
Athlete.
Yes, 3 sport. I was obsessed. I was the guy who I was watching 2 episodes of SportsCenter a day. I knew all that stuff. I was playing sports. I was playing alone in my backyard, shooting threes, or playing wiffle ball growing up. Like, I just loved it. And I don't regret any of it. And I actually think, like, yeah, I could have been reading and, being more intellectual growing up. But, especially the work I'm doing now, looking back, there was no better preparation actually for what I'm doing now than that. Those people skills. I admittedly, I had a good amount of talent in different things, and I didn't always apply I didn't have the work ethic that I've developed now. And so it just teaches you so many different life lessons and how to interact with people, teams, and leaders. And so I'm a big fan of that. Obviously, you can go overboard with the seriousness that you take as a kid, or in all that, but overall, I think it's a really great thing.
Nick, I want to leave you. We're getting close to the end here. I'm going to ask one more question. What does it mean to you to lead different?
I want to bring it back. If we bring it back to our faith, I actually am thinking about the word holy. I just learned this from Father Mike Schmitz. He's one of my spiritual guides. He's a great speaker and influencer, but he talks about the word holy actually means set apart. I didn't realize that until just recently. And so to be set apart as a leader, I think, is, for one, I think it's care is the word that's coming to mind. Like you can learn, there's plenty of, models to learn, and communication skills, and all those different things, and tactics, right? Which, again, it's both and. You need those things too. But when I think about the most impactful leaders in my life, like I just had one recently at the job before this man just had more care for me than anyone else has ever had in a leadership position. And it just bled through everything that he did, the encouragement, but also the challenge, and just everything that he did communicated, like, hey, I'm going to push you, but ultimately, I care about you and I want you to win. And though I haven't had a lot of leaders that communicated that, I've had a lot of leaders that tried, right? And that maybe, were trying to keep me on track, but it felt more like, oh, I'm going to kind of check up on you, kind of that commander leader. But when you really have someone that genuinely cares about you, I told HR in my exit interview, I'm glad you kept this guy, because I would run through a wall for this man. And that is more rare. And that is something also that you can't fake. you can't, there's no 3 steps, right, to pretending to care about people. You kind of just do or you don't. It's who you are. It's like in
Right.
your DNA, in your character. So that's what I would say is different, that level of care. And like genuinely, I want to see you thrive and be fully alive at work.
That's a great answer. And that's a great way to end the show. I really appreciate you being on, Nick. Guys, if you got any value out of this interview with Nick Koshute, one of our millennial interviewees, telling us about his experience at work, his passion for leadership, the kind of leadership that he likes to be displayed when he's under someone's leadership, and the kind of leader that he is in his work at YCP and on all the work he has done. I know, Nick, that a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this interview, especially those leaders that are looking for ways to connect with your generation more authentically. We really appreciate you being on. So don't forget, guys, to hit like, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to share this episode. We've had a couple of people that have had hundreds of views within the first day of their interview, Nick. So I'm hoping you'll share this widely with your network, and let's get that algorithm working for us so we can get the more word about how to lead different to more people across the world. So thank you very much, Nick. Have a great rest of your day. And what do you say we end the show on that note?
Why not?
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want to say I had so much fun in this conversation. So thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being on. You did a great job,
right.
Nick. You represent
right.
your generation well. You represent YCP well, and you represent yourself well. So thank you very much for being on. Guys, don't forget to tune in next week for another episode of the Lead Different podcast. Have a great weekend.
This is Lead Different.
Subscribe now. Discover a new era of leadership. Lead different because great leaders change the world.